of the hour on a Tuesday, and we are coming on the air with abortion center stage. With just 3 weeks until Election Day and ahead of key debates tonight in Florida, why President Biden is promising to protect abortion access after the midterms, as Republicans and most voters are focused instead on the economy. Plus, breaking news here in Washington. Sources tell NBC News that former President Trump will get a subpoena tomorrow from the January 6th committee. Why they don't want to hear from him until after the midterms. Plus, the suspect in a string of killings out in California is in court today. What we're hearing about the charges that he now faces. And some stunning numbers from a new report on women in the workplace. Why even those who reach leadership roles are leaving their jobs, listen to this, at twice the rate of men. Plus, in our backstory tonight, we go behind the scenes on a 5-year investigation leading to the arrest of a couple who stole billions in Bitcoin. You got to see this. And it's Tip-Off Tuesday in the NBA with basketball back in action after a chaotic and drama-filled offseason. We're going to get you caught up later in the show with our own Sam Brock down in Florida. Good day, I'm Tom Costello in for Hallie, and with exactly 3 weeks to go until the final votes are cast in the 2022 midterms, we're going to Florida. In the next couple of hours, voters will hear directly from the state's Senate candidates on the debate stage for the first and potentially only time. Tonight's showdown is between the Republican Senator Marco Rubio as well as the challenger, the Democrat, Val Demings. And there are a few reasons why this race is catching our eye. We're going to take it all in buckets. Let's start with this. First is the future of Florida. You know the history, right? Hanging chads and all. The state has a reputation of being kind of as swingy as swing states can get. And the debate's happening in Boca Raton, which is split right down the middle. But the last two presidential elections are really challenging that image, as the state is getting redder up and down the ballot since the 2016 election. Now, you can see that in the governor's race, with Ron DeSantis jumping out with a 10-point lead based on polling averages. That's interesting. Here's what's also interesting. Rubio is ahead, but not quite as much. To see why this is tighter, just follow the money. Demings has raised twice as much as Rubio. She's also spent twice as much. But it's Rubio that'll be talking about money tonight, focusing on inflation and crime, while Demings is likely to focus more on abortion. That basically mirrors what we saw in Ohio and Georgia, with key debates last night. Abortion is also part of this broad push by Democrats laid out today by President Biden. We're going to talk about more on that in a moment with NBC's Mike Memoli. But let's first go to Florida. NBC's Shaquille Brewster is there. He's in Lake Worth, Florida. All right, Shaq, we laid out the lines of attack by Rubio and Demings. How do they plan to go about them in the debate coming up very shortly?
Well, we got somewhat of a preview of those lines of attacks. If you just look at the campaign and television airwaves, I should say, what those campaign ads look like. And the campaign is saying that will be transferred onto the debate stage later today. So for Val Demings, you can expect her to face attacks of her voting record. Marco Rubio saying that she votes with the president 100% of the time. Calling her a Pelosi puppet is one of the lines that you heard from the campaign. You also get the attacks on crime, saying that despite her record as a former police chief in Orlando, that she supports defunding the police. She says that she pushes back on that. She supports police funding, but you can expect that to be the center of attacks for Val Demings. And then for Senator Rubio, you can expect him to be attacked on the issue of abortion, his support for a federal abortion ban without any exceptions. You can expect him to be attacked on his voting record. Val Demings in her campaign saying that he is somewhat of an absentee senator because of the amount of missed votes that he's had. You can expect him to push back on that and talk about some of his bipartisan achievements and accomplishments while in the Senate. So those attacks that Floridians have been seeing and dealing with over the past couple of months, they'll be able to confront them and respond to them. The candidates will in real time at tonight's one and only debate.
Okay, and now the economy is something that's animating Republican voters big time. So what are you hearing about how that's going to be playing out tonight?
Yeah, and really good point that you make in terms of the economy being one of the animating issues for Republican voters, a little bit more than Democrats. That's true in polling, and that's also true in the conversations I've been having with folks, specifically in Boca Raton. You put it up there in terms of how swingy of an area it is. Listen to what the Republicans told me about the impact the economy is having, not only in their lives, but on their vote.
Everything is so expensive now. Everything.
I feel a lot of the policies that have been currently installed are affecting the economy, and no one seems to care about fixing the issues, working together and fixing the issues.
The economy is one of those issues that in polling we see voters side more with the Republican Party. Abortion is one of those issues where if you list that as one of your top issues, you usually side with Democrats more. And in some of the conversations I've had with Democratic voters, you heard them say that while the economy is important to them, they're voting on the issue of abortion.
Okay, well, listen, let's talk about the Democrats in Florida, because they have not had a good streak of late, right? It's been a losing streak. If the polls hold and they lose again, what are the party's broader concerns about whether they can ever have a significant toehold again in Florida?
Yeah, and, you know, Democrats are looking back at 2012 with President Obama. He was the last presidential candidate to be able to win the state of Florida. Then you go to governor's race, DeSantis having that success in 2018. That was a wave election. That was a year where in other states you had Democrats flipping gubernatorial races and flipping Senate seats, and the Republican was able to hold on. So if Republicans are able to hold on again in Florida this time around, it does spell trouble for the Democratic Party, especially with Republicans having the advantage in registrations.
Shaq Brewster still living out of a suitcase. Now he's in Florida. Shaq, thanks very much, buddy. Appreciate it. All right, let's talk about now that broader midterm push, because Val Demings isn't the only one talking about abortion today. President Biden is also promising that his first bill to the next Congress would write Roe v. Wade into law in January. That's as long as people vote. Here's the president today.
The court got Roe right nearly 50 years ago, and I believe Congress should codify Roe once and for all. And together we'll restore the right to choose for every woman in every state in America. So vote. You got to get out the vote. We can do this if we vote.
Obviously, he wants Democrats to win. NBC's Mike Memoli was at the president's speech. He joins me now. All right, let's look at the New York Times Siena poll, Mike. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but showing only 4% of voters believe that abortion is the most important issue. Nearly half say it's either the economy or inflation. So why make that, the abortion issue, the day one priority with 3 weeks to go, instead of how you might be helping Americans with their wallets, for example?
Well, it's been interesting to watch the president as he's on the campaign trail these last few weeks, because most of the time he's out on the road, he is talking about a legislative record of success in the view of, obviously, Democrats, talking about the CHIPS Act, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act. So those are the substantive accomplishments they're asking voters to reward them for at the ballot box. But today, what he was doing is really trying to challenge Democrats who have been obviously frustrated by the Dobbs decision, about the absence now of a nationally guaranteed right to an abortion, to really show up at the ballot box and give the president, give Democrats in Congress an ability to really act on it and to restore that right. And so it really is an interesting split screen here. As the White House would put it, they're walking and chewing gum here at the same time. Enacting a nationwide protection of abortion rights is probably a much quicker legislative process in the Congress than the unfinished, unrealized parts of the president's economic agenda, which would take months of negotiations. Tom, we only need to look back at how long it took for them to get, for instance, the Inflation Reduction Act passed into law. So this was really the president trying to give a very tangible accomplishment for Democrats to target for them to vote for, get out and vote for this fall.
Okay, Memoli, you are very good at reality checks. Even if the Democrats defy expectations and keep the House, even if that were to happen, they'd need a miracle to get the 60 votes needed in the Senate to codify Roe without Republican help. So what does he think will be different come January?
So what the president is doing is really being explicit about what he's asking for. He's saying we need to keep the House and not keep the Senate. We need to expand the Senate majority. So right now, of course, Democrats have 50 votes and the Vice President, Kamala Harris, as a tiebreaker. But in order to realize this promise today to codify Roe versus Wade, they realistically need at least 2 more senators. Now, yes, we think 60 votes traditionally is the filibuster-proof majority, but Democrats have, and the president himself has signed on to what you would call a carve-out, an exception to the filibuster for very specific, limited cases, and abortion rights is one of them that they'd laid out. So when Democrats tried to pass this earlier this year, Joe Manchin, for instance, stood in the way, was not willing to carve out an exception to the filibuster for this, and they want to have a Manchin-proof, maybe not a filibuster-proof, but a Manchin-proof majority in the Senate, and that's what they're hoping for here.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Mike Memoli watching it all from the White House. We have some breaking news just before we came on the air tonight. The January 6th committee is likely to formally issue a subpoena to former President Donald Trump tomorrow. That according to multiple sources. And now they're still working out a date for Mr. Trump to respond to their subpoena when it actually comes. But it will be after the midterms, we're told. NBC was first to break the news last week that the committee planned on voting to subpoena the former president. Some more breaking news, a major blow to the special counsel overseeing the investigation into the FBI's Trump-Russia probe after a jury is acquitting an analyst behind the so-called Steele dossier. That is on 4 counts of lying to the feds. Acquitted. Igor Danchenko turned over much of the research leading to that document, which had a number of unproven claims about the former president's campaign and its supposed ties to Russia. It's a big defeat for John Durham, who got picked by ex-Attorney General Bill Barr to look into baseless allegations of some sort of a deep state conspiracy against Mr. Trump. Durham has yet to find any proof of that and says he is disappointed about the outcome. The Justice Department is expecting a full report from Durham by the end of the year. Okay, now to Ukraine, where multiple infrastructure facilities across the country were hit again by Russian shelling today. And Ukrainian officials say that in one southern city, they've been hit by missiles, air and rocket attacks regularly. In the western city of Zhytomyr, the mayor says people there have no running water or electricity, raising concerns about what these infrastructure attacks from Russia will mean with winter just around the corner. NBC's Cal Perry remains on duty from Kyiv. Cal, it feels like the focus is now somewhat split between what's happening on the front lines and how Russia's impacting the day-to-day life, really, for people living in Ukraine by taking out power and water. I'm guessing it's already starting to get cold there.
Yeah, absolutely. The weather is starting to turn. I have a return monitor here, so I can see the picture of the air, and I'm looking behind me, and the lights are going to be fewer and fewer as we continue to do live shows here. Sooner or later, it's going to be totally pitch black because this is a city that is running out of power. This is a city that's already having to ration its power. People are being asked to basically do rolling blackouts voluntarily. The concern is, as you said, 30% of those power stations have already been taken out, according to the president. If that number gets to 40%, we're going to have a major crisis on our hands here, and just as you said, the winter months are approaching. So the capital city here has really 2 things going in the wrong direction. One is the fear of these drones and these rockets. 3 people were killed today in a rocket attack. 5 people were killed by drones yesterday. So there's the immediate concern of what you're seeing on the left side of your screen, which is people are dying from these weapons. The secondary concern is, again, the power. And the concern is that people will start to leave this city, that Russia will make this an unlivable place. This is out of the Russian playbook. This is what they have done across the country. And it seems clear that as they lose on the battlefield, and there's word that they're losing on the battlefield in big ways, they're lashing out here. They're trying to bring the war front to the home front, Tom.
Okay, let me ask you this. You've got lights on, Cal, so I'm guessing you have battery power there.
Yeah.
Is there just a sense here there in Kyiv of just, has it started to ratchet up the tension? Are people really starting to worry again like they did back in February? And then I want you to really quickly touch on this Russian jet. 15 people died, apparently, after that Russian military jet crashed into the building in Russia during a training exercise. But can you talk a little bit about how you have power, what's the tension like there, and then about the Russian jet?
We're often on generator power here, so it's hard for me to tell if the city power is on here. But even when the city power goes off, we kick into generator power so we can keep broadcasting. People here are worried. They're definitely worried in a way that they weren't before because they see the situation is changing and they know what's coming and they know what Russia's MO is. And they're worried that these strikes will continue, and they likely will continue. As for the jet that crashed, look, the Russians say this is a training operation. What I would say to you as a reporter on the ground here is it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a training operation along the border with Ukraine when there's a war raging. And that's what Ukrainian officials are pointing to. They're not saying anything official, but it is very strange that Russia would have a training operation with a fighter jet along that area. As you said, it crashed into an apartment building. Video shows the pilot got out on time, but 14 people dead, including 3 children. The last thing I would add, Tom, people here hope, at least officials hope, that this was an insider job and that it's starting to show those cracks in Russian society.
Interesting. Okay, Cal, thank you. Cal Perry in Kyiv. Today, Biden administration officials are exclusively telling NBC that they are considering trying to discourage U.S. companies from doing business with Saudi Arabia after the recent Saudi push to cut global oil production. It's basically the administration trying to see how to use American business as leverage against Saudi Arabia. Why? Their decision to cut oil production is likely to increase gas prices here at home, something that gives a major oil exporter like Russia more money to fund their war in Ukraine. Officials say no decisions have been made yet about whether to proceed. The global community is today raising concerns about Iranian rock climber Ilnaz Rakabi. Now, after a video of her competing without a head covering went viral. The competition happened Sunday in South Korea. It shows Rakabi wearing a headband, but no hijab, no headscarf, which is, of course, part of Iran's ultra-conservative dress code, and it even extends to athletes who are competing abroad. Today, a message posted on her Instagram account said issues surrounding her hijab happened unintentionally. The post apologized for worrying people and said Rakabi is headed back to Iran. NBC News has yet to verify if Rakabi wrote that message herself, and the circumstances under which it was posted remain unclear. But the Iranian embassy in Seoul tweeted that Rakabi left South Korea for Iran with other members of her team today. State media also cited the embassy. NBC has not confirmed whether she is in Iran yet. NBC's Megan Fitzgerald following all of this from London. So Rakabi left South Korea for Iran today, we're told, according to the authorities in both countries. But activists and rights groups are now fearing for her safety. Do we know anything at all about where she is right now?
Yes, absolutely. They have been very vocal and concerned for her whereabouts and for her safety, as you just mentioned. And we don't know exactly where she is. You mentioned that the embassy in Seoul, the Iranian embassy, saying that she's making her way to Iran, but there's no exact confirmation of exactly where she is. We're also hearing from the International Sport Federation. They've released a statement that, in fact, I want to read for you. They say, our understanding is that she is returning to Iran, and we will continue to monitor the situation as it develops on her arrival. It is important to stress that athletes' safety is paramount for us, and we support any efforts to keep a valued member of our community safe in this situation. But again, no official confirmation on whether or not she made it to Iran, Tom.
What's the reaction to that Instagram post? NBC is still trying to, we don't know specifically if she wrote it, who wrote it, how legitimate it is, but it was on her Instagram post, right? How are people responding to that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And people are responding with skepticism because, as you said, you just nailed it. No one knows if she wrote that, if she wrote it under duress, if someone else wrote it for her. But to give you some perspective here, we had an opportunity to speak with an Iranian woman who fled to the UK after getting threats, she said, from the Iranian regime after she didn't wear a headscarf at a competition in Shanghai, this chess competition. I want you to listen carefully to what she told us earlier.
They asked me to write an apology letter. They asked me to post it in my Instagram, and they sent me a list of instructions to do. But I didn't want to apologize for not wearing headscarf. This is my basic right. I was suffering from wearing mandatory hijab all my life. My impression was that she deliberately didn't wear headscarf to make a statement.
And of course, the woman that we spoke with earlier today is not in contact in any way with that athlete, but she does fear for her safety as well, Tom.
Yeah, it seems highly unlikely that it was an accident to go without that headscarf, given all of what's happening in the world right now with Iran. Megan Fitzgerald, thank you very much. A French cement company involved in construction of One World Trade Center here in New York has pleaded guilty to supporting ISIS and other terror groups. Listen to this. The guilty plea for Lafarge Cement came in a federal court in Brooklyn today and included a roughly $780 million fine. The Justice Department alleges Lafarge Cement paid ISIS millions of dollars to protect its plant in Syria in 2013 and 2014. This was when ISIS was kidnapping and murdering journalists and aid workers. And this is the first company ever charged by the DOJ with providing material support to foreign terrorist organizations. Ken Delaney covered the Justice Department. He's here with us now. This was a head-scratcher that a company clearly trying to protect its own interests in Syria would be paying money to a known terrorist organization like ISIS?
And not just any company, Tom. This is the world's largest cement company. They're in dozens of countries, and they have plants in 43 U.S. states. And prosecutors said they made a deal with the devil, not just the local employees, but senior employees. And what they say is that prosecutors say is that they wanted to protect the interest. They had built this $680 million plant in 2011 in Syria. Then the civil war happens. They wanted to keep making money. So as ISIS began to seize territory, they had to do business with ISIS. So they paid them off. And eventually they got into business with ISIS. ISIS was providing them raw materials and cement. They even had placards for their cars, allowing them to pass through ISIS territory. And prosecutors say that the executives knew this was happening. They tried to cover it up. And you may ask, well, so why is this happening now? Because we're talking about conduct 10 years ago. Yeah. There were charges in France a while ago, but it appears that U.S. prosecutors got a whole trove of emails and internal corporate documents, and they brought the hammer down in a way that no other country could.
You've got to wonder if this is not going to damage their ability to do business, at least in the United States. I understand that Lafarge did release a statement today, right? And in part, it says that it accepted responsibility for the actions of the individual executives involved whose behavior was in flagrant violation of Lafarge's code of conduct, and that they deeply regret that this conduct occurred. This isn't the first time, though, that this company, you alluded to this. They were already under investigation in France. It's not the first time they've been under investigation, but they're trying to throw some executives in Syria under the bus.
Well, it's actually French executives, and they are charged in France. So no individuals were charged in this case here in the U.S., but there is an ongoing case in France, and this company is merged with a Swiss conglomerate. So the Swiss conglomerate is basically saying, it wasn't us, guys, it was these other people over here. And but they're paying nearly $800 million in this settlement to the U.S. government.
It's a settlement, so if they're going to pay up, then they do accept some responsibility. All right, what kind of message does this then send, this guilty plea, to other companies out there, for example?
Well, the Justice Department hopes it sends a powerful message, because it's not uncommon for countries in contested areas to pay armed groups. What the DOJ is saying is you should not do business ever with a designated terrorist organization. They will come after you hard. They will make you pay, Tom.
All right, Ken, thank you. NBC's Ken Delaney. Coming up, breaking news, more breaking news, a guilty plea in the Kristen Smart case, and why George Floyd's family is planning to sue Kanye West for $250 million. Plus, James Corden banned, then unbanned from a popular New York City restaurant. What the owners are saying about him and what happened in our 5 things. Stay with us. We're back, and we have breaking news out of California right now. Our affiliate KSBY in Central California reports a jury has found Paul Flores guilty of first-degree murder in the Kristen Smart case, more than 25 years after the Cal Poly student disappeared from a campus party. The verdict came and capped a long-running case that started way back in 1996. Flores and his father were arrested last year in connection with the disappearance of Smart, who was then a 19-year-old college freshman. The story was a big deal when it happened. Authorities never found Smart's body, but she was legally declared dead back in 2002. Flores' father is accused of helping cover up the crime. A separate jury is expected to announce a verdict in his case. And just moments ago, the suspected Stockton serial killer was charged with murdering 3 people in San Joaquin County. The district attorney saying, quote, "We have more work to do." 43-year-old Wesley Brownlee made his first court appearance just a little while ago. He was charged with the murders of Jonathan Rodriguez Hernandez, Juan Cruz, and Lawrence Lopez earlier. He's also suspected of 3 other killings, but he has not yet been charged. NBC's Steve Patterson is joining us now with more. Steve, Brownlee's court appearance just ended. What more did we learn about the killings he's charged with and the ones that he's suspected of but not yet charged with?
Yeah, Tom, here's the score so far. It's 3 counts of murder, as you just mentioned, 1 count of a felon or addict in possession of a firearm, and 1 count of possession of ammunition. Now, you may be wondering, where are the other counts for the other people that were shot and killed? The district attorney has made it clear from the start that there will be additional charges beyond what happens today. That is pending further ballistic evidence and further reporting that still needs to be processed. This is just a case where the case kind of preceded the actual reporting that needs to be done in the other cases, in the other shootings that were done. And by the way, that's how they got him in the first place. Essentially, it was good old-fashioned detective work, matching those ballistics, combing through surveillance video, crowdsourcing with the public. But again, the DA is saying that there will be further charges. Some more detail from inside the courtroom. We have a reporter's station in there. The DA recommended penalty of life without parole. The judge agreed to that. The judge asked if he understands what's happening. He did. There will be a court-appointed attorney for him because he wasn't clear on if he could afford representation or not. The DA also mentioned, this is important, that the case could become capital due to enhancements and the 3 other killings that were uncharged. That could bring up a situation where the death penalty is brought in, so that's important as well. And, you know, again, that there will be more from this. We do expect another hearing in November. There was no plea entered, though. Want to make that clear. This was just a first appearance. No plea entered. So he wasn't asked if he, thought he was guilty or innocent. That will come at a later date. But what we do know, again, is that there are these 3 murder charges. There will be more to follow, according to the DA, who's giving a press conference as we speak. Tom.
Competency hearing next, do you think?
It may be. There's a lot of scuttle from the legal community that, looking at his prior rap sheet, he hadn't done much as far as violent crime. There were some minor drug charges. There were some minor traffic violations. All of that evidence, combined with what we heard in court today, could lead to a competency hearing on whether or not his mental faculties are in place to stand trial the way he should. Tom.
All right, Steve, thank you. Steve Patterson out in Los Angeles. The family of George Floyd is planning to sue Kanye West for $250 million in damages over false statements about Floyd's death. Attorneys say the suit on behalf of Floyd's child will cite harassment, defamation, and emotional distress. During an appearance on the Drink Champs podcast, Kanye West, who legally changed his name to just Ye, falsely claimed Floyd died because of fentanyl use. Lawyers for the family say Floyd's daughter is, quote, being re-traumatized by the comments. NBC has reached out to Kanye West's managers, attorneys, and representatives for comment. Danny Savalos joins us now, our on-staff attorney. Danny, we've been reminded with recent rulings against Alex Jones and his lies about Sandy Hook that free speech doesn't necessarily protect harassment and lies. So one would think maybe that the family would have to prove that he was trying to harass them, maybe defame them.
First, defamation is out. Defamation, a deceased person cannot bring a claim for defamation. So really all that remains likely is intentional or maybe even reckless infliction of emotional distress. And this is not the Alex Jones case. Alex Jones made up lies. This, on the other hand, there is evidence that there was fentanyl in George Floyd's system. So a defense would probably center around the fact that, well, there's scientific evidence that there was fentanyl, and then they would add evidence that fentanyl in even tiny doses can cause death. It was a central theme of the defense, a defense that was rejected, but a defense that had some basis in scientific fact nonetheless. This would be an uphill battle for the plaintiff here, Floyd's family, against Ye or Kanye or whatever he goes by as the defendant.
So, yeah, it sounds like you're answering my next question. This sounds like it's not going to be an easy case for this family to pursue against him.
It's not. Intentional infliction of emotional distress is usually a catch-all, a claim that attorneys like me add at the end of a list of what we think are stronger claims. It is usually not at the top of the complaint. It's usually more towards the bottom or the end of the complaint. And that's because it's very, very difficult to win. You need extreme and outrageous behavior that transcends the bounds of normal human decency. And a comment made during a podcast about fentanyl, which was, according to the scientific evidence, found in George Floyd's system. And we all know now that fentanyl, even in tiny, tiny doses, can cause death. That's going to be a very difficult case to win, because Yee will probably fall back on a defense of, look, there was fentanyl, and it's my opinion that fentanyl contributed to the death. Therefore, verdict for defense.
Counselor, thank you. Danny Savalos, thanks very much. Let's get you over now to the 5 things, our team thinks you need to know about tonight. Number 1, cooler temps and high humidity are helping firefighters in Washington state fight the Nakia fire. It's in the Nakia Creek fire. It's burning in the southwest part of the state, just above Portland. The fire covers almost 1,800 acres. It's only about 5% contained right now. Fire commanders say it was first reported a little more than a week ago, and they said that they believe it was human caused. Yesterday, they identified a vehicle of interest seen near where the fire actually started. Number 2, Microsoft is cutting more jobs. The company did not say how many people would be affected by this round of layoffs. It announced another round of cuts just a few months ago. The company is expecting its revenue to slow down this quarter. It will announce its earnings report a week from today. Number 3, former astronaut James McDivitt, who commanded the Apollo 9 and Gemini 4 missions, has died. He was 93 years old. McDivitt was in NASA's second astronaut class. During Gemini 4, his best friend, Ed White, made the first U.S. spacewalk, and McDivitt took those photos. Aren't they spectacular? Number 4, late-night TV host James Corden was briefly banned from a New York City restaurant, according to the restaurant's owner. Why? Well, on Instagram, the owner of the popular restaurant called Balthazar called Corden one of the, quote, most abusive customers ever. He later posted that the Late Show host called him and apologized. So he then rescinded the ban. Corden, the restaurant, and the restaurant's owner did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Number 5, get ready for Big Macs, McFlurries, and donuts. It's not just any donut. The Krispy Kremes are coming to McDonald's. McDonald's says it's selling them at 9 locations in Kentucky for the first time as part of a test. It's trying to figure out how teaming up would affect McDonald's operations and sugar count. When we come back, employees at an Amazon warehouse are voting against organizing. What's next for Works? What's next for Works who wanted it, and the bigger union boom after the break. We're back, and today workers at an Amazon warehouse near Albany, New York voted to reject unionizing, handing a defeat to Amazon warehouse union efforts. About 66% of workers at the location voted against joining the Amazon labor union. This fight is part of a larger boom in union activity involving some of the biggest companies in the world. But how did Amazon, its employees, and other big brands get to this point? Let's take a look. Today, another Amazon warehouse is voting not to unionize. The warehouse near Albany, New York, employs nearly 800 people.
We're definitely going to continue to demand for the changes that are necessary.
A spokesperson from Amazon tells NBC News in part, quote, "We're glad that our team in Albany was able to have their voices heard.
We're all in this together."
Amazon has been grappling with union efforts for more than a year. In February of 2021, formal union activity began at the Bessemer, Alabama warehouse. That unionization effort was eventually defeated. In April of this year, Amazon workers in Staten Island successfully voted to unionize the first warehouse in the U.S.
Today, we make history.
On May 2nd, a different Staten Island warehouse rejected a union bid. This Amazon union activity, part of a larger labor movement occurring across the country.
Seattle is a union town.
Organizing efforts have been ongoing at coffee giant Starbucks stores since 2021. Now, with at least 240 of its stores in the U.S. unionizing, pushing for higher wages and better employee benefits. Days ago, tech giant Apple saw its second retail store's employees vote to unionize as well. The latest union fights, big box retailers, Lowe's and Home Depot employees petitioning to form what would be their respective companies' first unions. Union activity on the rise, with the National Labor Relations Board seeing a sharp increase in election petitions, up 53% over the last year. And the latest Gallup poll shows 71% of Americans now approve of labor unions. But despite the momentum, with inflation on the rise and possible recession talk becoming a real reality, it's unclear if this unionization trend will continue. For his part, Amazon's labor union president vows to continue the fight, saying in part, quote, "It isn't a loss, it's an ongoing battle." Also, listen to this. A new report out today says that women in leadership roles are quitting their jobs at a faster rate than ever before. In fact, they're 1.5 times more likely than men at their level to leave for a company more committed to diversity and inclusion. To put this into perspective, for every woman at the director level who then gets promoted, 2 women directors are choosing to leave. So why is this happening? Well, women are looking for higher pay, better opportunities to climb the ladder, and more flexibility, like working remotely. But they also say workplace treatment compared to their male colleagues isn't always the same. They are more likely to have their authority questioned and to be stretched too thin. CNBC's Julia Borston covers media and tech. Julia, this is a fascinating study. The report highlights unequal treatment as a big driver of why women are leaving, right? They're more likely than men to have a coworker get credit for their idea, and they're more likely to get mistaken for someone more junior. So where do the improvements even start?
Well, look, I think these statistics are so dramatic, and they point out that so many companies have so much unconscious bias in their system. And if women are getting treated badly, a lot of them are saying now, I've had enough of this. I'm going to go do my own thing, or I'm going to go to a company that values me more. So I think companies really need to understand that they have a problem, need to look at this study very carefully and figure out different ways where they could take out the bias and focus on data instead to make sure people are getting treated equitably, but also getting paid and promoted fairly.
Okay, well, listen, the study found that there is a pipeline problem and a broken rung, if you will. And that, I mean, this was really interesting. For every 100 men who are promoted from an entry-level position to manager, only 87 women are promoted and only 82 women of color are promoted. So what kind of effect does this underrepresentation have on the company itself, but also on morale?
It has a terrible impact on morale, especially if women are thinking, hey, maybe I'm not getting promoted because I'm a woman. Maybe my contributions are not being evaluated fairly. So I think it all comes back to the data. Companies need to be looking at their hiring, their promotion practices, looking at how they give out pay raises, and trying to make sure that they're really doing it fairly. And if you look at the long-term implications of this, is if women miss that opportunity to get that first promotion to manager, they will never make it up to the C-suite. And that's why it's so important to look at this so-called broken rung, because until that rung is broken, there will be this longer-term pipeline problem in terms of getting women into the most senior management roles.
Okay, and bigger picture now, some of these same factors that drive women leaders to want to leave their jobs are even more important to young women. So as we look long-term, are we also concerned about losing young women? And what could be the implications there? Asking for some close family friends.
Yes, this is absolutely important. If we're seeing companies have a hard time retaining their most senior women, and the fact is that the younger generation women care even more about things like a good workplace environment, not only fair, but one that might also be flexible, we're going to need to see companies invest more in policies that are not just good for more senior women, but really good for everyone. One thing that women are increasingly pushing for, and this study talks about, is the flexibility to work from home. So that can be an incredibly valuable thing, especially for female workers. The challenge is making sure that people who are working from home or spending more time working remotely are not at a disadvantage when it comes to pay and promotion. So you don't want people to miss out because they're not getting that face time, and that's something that companies are going to have to reckon with as well. But flexibility and fairness, that's top of mind for everyone.
Absolutely. Julia Borston, thank you very much. Interesting. Coming up, we're getting into an alleged crypto laundering scheme that goes back years. Our backstory tonight, it's all about the so-called crocodile of Wall Street. Take a look at that and stay with us. So, you know, NBC covers hundreds of stories each day, and because you could not possibly read, watch, or listen to all of them, our bureau teams have done it for you and for me and for Bert here in the studio. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we like to call The Local. From our Midwest Bureau, a pilot and a passenger died after their plane that they were in crashed into a car dealership parking lot in Marietta, Ohio. It happened this morning. There were no reports of any injuries to anybody on the ground. Some cars and parts of the building were damaged. The crash is still under investigation. From our Western Bureau, 2 college sophomores are recovering from their injuries after a grizzly bear mauled them while they were antler hunting in Wyoming over the weekend. They were able to call 911 after the attack. One of them had to be airlifted to a hospital in Montana. They are both expected to make a full recovery. From our Southeast Bureau, low water levels along the banks of the Mississippi in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, are revealing a shipwreck. Archaeologists believe it's a ferry that may have sunk in the late 1800s or early 1900s. Now, the National Weather Service says the river is at its lowest level since 2012, and it's expected to drop even more over the coming weeks. Time now to get to the backstory. You know, this is our behind-the-scenes look at how a story comes together and how it fits into our bigger picture. Imagine you bought some cryptocurrency and then you woke up to find your digital wallet completely empty. Well, that's what happened to thousands of investors back in 2016 when billions of dollars worth of crypto were stolen. No one has been charged with the hack, but a 5-year-long investigation did lead the feds to a young married couple in Manhattan. Now, these two on your screen right there, Heather Morgan and Ilya Lichtenstein. They were arrested and charged with conspiracy to launder billions in stolen Bitcoin. The story went viral. People uncovered videos of Morgan rapping as the so-called crocodile of Wall Street and videos of her showing off her quirky talents. CNBC's Eamon Javers is taking us inside this investigation that has captured the attention of the internet and even the victims of the hack.
That's super weird story. I can imagine that in the future there will be movies about it.
To see these people acting the way they are and just being so open about their lifestyle and stuff, it was just fascinating to me. Honestly, I could only laugh.
Morgan and her husband have a status hearing on their case coming up in November. Eamon joins me now from the CNBC newsroom. I watched some of this earlier today, Eamon, and it's caught a lot of people's attention because there's a lot of interesting, kind of strange behavior, random details. Talk about how you and your team came across the story and what drew you into it.
Well, this went viral the instant the Department of Justice announced the arrest of these two, Heather and her husband, Dutch, because Heather has this Instagram and social media presence that is really, you have to see it to believe it. She is a surrealist rapper. She specializes in art with taxidermy, that is, you know, like dead animal bodies. And the raps are wild. She calls herself the crocodile of Wall Street. She raps under the nom de rap of Razzle Khan. And so it just went viral from there. And being CNBC, we said, you know, we've got to get to the bottom of this. How did this couple come to be accused of money laundering billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin? And can you even money launder billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin? What happens if someone has stolen too much money and they can't actually spend it? So those are sort of the questions that we started out with here, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, you're at the stock exchange, not at the CNBC office. My apologies.
That's right.
I'm looking at that video, and I'm thinking, how did that lady manage to convince people? How was she behind this scheme to steal billions in Bitcoin? Was there anything that you learned over the course of your reporting that really surprised you here?
Yeah, you know, the big takeaway for me, Tom, on this was, you know, a lot of us have this idea of cryptocurrency is sort of perfect for criminals, right? Because it's anonymous, it's digital, it goes over international borders. But in reality, what the law enforcement experts told us is they are getting better and better and better at tracking this stuff. So they can see exactly where the cryptocurrency is on what's called the blockchain. It's a public ledger where all of the currency is registered. What they have to do is then match that to a real person in the real world, and they have all sorts of new techniques to do that. So it's becoming much less anonymous and much less of a playground for criminals these days. And the criminals who did do criminal activity years and years ago are getting caught now because the trail goes back years. So it's really bad if you engaged in some kind of crime years ago and you thought you got away with it. Well, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. All right, talk about the prep and the research that went into this. You interviewed a lot of people connected to this couple, and this was a project that was months in the making, right? You really worked on this.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we watched a lot of rap videos, right? So we did do that, and it's probably worth taking those in. Sometimes you can't take your eyes off them. But yeah, we talked to the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, who explained to us how law enforcement does this. We talked to former gun-carrying IRS agents who track each of these Bitcoins over the entire ledger. We talked to the family and friends of Ilya and Heather to get a sense of who they are as people. They are a very odd couple. They're unusual personalities. Everyone said that. But Heather Morgan in particular, her friends describe her as somebody who is unusual and knows it. She talks about being weird and out of step with everybody else, and she sort of uses that as her superpower in some ways. And she also, we found, gave these videos where she talked about social engineering and convincing people to do stuff or give you stuff or let you into places where you shouldn't be. So she's got this air of mystery to her, which was fascinating.
I mean, it looks like she's sticking her foot in her mouth. It's hard to believe people actually went for this. But all right, Eamon, thank you very much. You can check out the full Crocodile of Wall Street documentary right now over at youtube.com/CNBC. Still to come, the NBA is back. What to know about the new season and all the scandals surrounding that coming back. Brittany Griner is spending her 32nd birthday in a Russian jail and released a statement today saying, "Thank you, everyone, for fighting so hard to get me home. All the support and love are definitely helping me." A representative from the State Department spoke with Griner today for the first time since August, while Griner's wife, Sherelle, launched a new online campaign, #WeAreBG, to put pressure on the U.S. government to bring the basketball star home. It's been 8 months now since Griner was arrested in Moscow for allegedly having cannabis oil in her luggage. She's serving a 9-year prison term for that. If you are a basketball fan, then you know today is the first day of a new NBA season, topping off with a doubleheader tonight. The Philadelphia 76ers taking on the Boston Celtics, and then later, the LA Lakers going up against reigning NBA champs, the Golden State Warriors. And even if you're not a big fan, you've probably been hearing a lot about what's going on in the league lately, a lot of those conversations, not even about what's happening on the court. You've got the Warriors' Draymond Green. Then he's punching teammate Jordan Poole during practice this month. The Phoenix Suns owner, Robert Sarver, planning to sell the team after getting a lot of heat from players, fans, and sponsors after an investigation uncovered racist and sexist workplace conduct. And then the Celtics coach, Ime Udoka, he was suspended for the season for violating team rules by having a relationship with a staff member. NBC's Sam Brock is at the Miami Heat Arena in Miami, obviously. Sam, talk about all the drama and the scandals that had people talking about the NBA even before the season started. How big of a shadow is this going to cast over the season?
A pretty long one, Tom. I mean, the NBA has been mired in controversy over this offseason. You mentioned Ime Udoka, the coach of the Boston Celtics. They got to the finals last year. This is someone who is now suspended, Tom, for the entire year. Initially, it was reported from the team that he was involved in an inappropriate but consensual relationship. But that devolved only days later to the Celtics ownership admitting there was a months-long investigation that essentially pointed to the fact that there were volumes of violations in the word of the Celtics owner. That's one thing. Then Robert Sarver, you mentioned, the former owner of the Phoenix Suns, released he's in the process of selling the team right now. An NBA investigation found 18 years of misogynistic and racist behavior. Initially, Sarver, Tom, was only suspended for 1 year and fined $10 million. But after that report was released, the transparency it created a situation where he now is going to be selling the team. And oh yeah, you mentioned Draymond Green as well. From the championship Golden State Warriors, he sucker punched his own teammate, and the video got leaked. That sort of chain of events has now created all sorts of drama for the Warriors, as they are still the team to beat in the NBA this year.
Okay, well, with the LA Lakers playing tonight, you've got LeBron James closing in on a scoring record. He could become the all-time leading scorer in the NBA history, right? So talk us through where that's going to go and how soon.
This is the brilliance of LeBron James, Tom, is the fact that his scoring is not exactly high up on the attributes that make him an all-time great. He has otherworldly skills, passing, court vision, certainly selflessness, and yet LeBron is second on the all-time list for scoring and almost certainly will pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. If you look at this list right now, Tom, Kareem is at the top with 38,000-plus points. Just underneath that, 1,300 points behind is LeBron James. Then you have a couple of names you might have heard of: Karl Malone, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. So he's already vaulted past all of those players, and now is in a position, if he were to score more than 1,300 points in the season, but in 18 of 19 seasons that he's played, Tom, he scored more than 1,500 points. It just so happens that in recent years, LeBron has dealt with some injuries. He's had such an incredibly long and successful career. If he stays healthy for most of the season, he's going to break the record this year. That, my friends, is history, Tom.
All right, real quickly, talk us through one of the biggest NBA headlines. It's a guy who's not even playing this year. He's an 18-year-old and one of the best NBA prospects since LeBron James. Talk us through who he is.
The best prospect. I noticed you didn't say his name. I'm going to give it a go. Victor Wembanyama, who is from France. I respect that, Tom. I would have done the same thing. He's from France, 8-foot wingspan. He shoots like Kevin Durant and dribbles like a guard. Basically, LeBron James called him an alien, quote unquote, the best prospect since LeBron James to enter the NBA. There is going to be a frenzy over who gets to draft him.
All right, buddy. Sam Brock in Miami. Thanks, amigo. Great reporting. Thank you. That's it for our hour right now. We're going to have much more for you tomorrow. Same time, same place. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.